Okay, I just want to read something here for you, and I'd like your comment on it. This was a press release in one of the international media releases. It says that the Israeli Army 36th Military Division is now operating deep inside of Gaza, really in the final stages of encircling the Gaza Strip by land, sea, and air. The goal is to take out Hamas and its targets. They're talking about observation posts, weapons facilities, and all other types of military infrastructure. The military chief said he has visited troops. That's, of course, the IDF troops. They are ready at any time to start this operation. Their objections are to eliminate Hamas from the Gaza Strip entirely. And there's a bit of untruth in there because it's not only Hamas that's being targeted, it's the entire Palestinian population.
Listen, dear, it's time to start looking at the Islamic resistance movement the same way we looked at the ANC. Botha and all like the savages of apartheid in the history of South Africa tried to eliminate the ANC. They failed. In the end of the day, it's a resistance movement. The only way a resistance movement will be eliminated is when the oppression that created that resistance movement is removed. What the state of Israel is after is the impossible, and it's unrealistic, and it's not going to happen. You know, the only way for a resistance movement to come to an end is when the oppression that created that resistance movement comes to an end. What the state of Israel want to maintain is apartheid, want to maintain its oppression, want to maintain its savagery, and expect to have zero resistance to that savagery. So this whole thing about rooting out the Islamic resistance movement, this entire thing about, we are only targeting the Islamic resistance movement, like we've seen that happening. The more than 4,000 Palestinian minors who are not even aware of what the Islamic resistance movement is all about were blown to pieces and were murdered. And every single Palestinian that Israel has been murdering in Gaza is a person they decided that those people that they've been bombing out of existence and crushing their skulls on the rubble of their homes are members of the Islamic resistance movement. It's just like part of that propaganda machine. Like the entire thing about bringing in the Islamic resistance movement as a target serves like the continuity of Israeli genocide over Palestinians in Gaza. Like military operations that they call military operations are mainly like blowing civilians out of existence. I'm not sure if this kind of savagery used to happen under apartheid in South Africa. Like you find one person who's unhappy with apartheid, they take matter to hand, and then their entire community ends up being like obliterated, and their entire community ends up like being destroyed and murdered. Like I know of the savagery of apartheid South Africa, but I'm not sure that the savagery of apartheid South Africa have created some genocidal crimes like the ones we are witnessing before our eyes in Gaza. So trying to give a military cover and a military success for the criminal behavior of the state of Israel, for bombing the hell out of every 1 square kilometer in the Gaza Strip, has received more than 70 tons of explosives so far. That's the average of explosives that the state of Israel have been using against the Palestinians in Gaza. Like military personnel that speak about military achievements. Like all of this propaganda is to restore faith back into the criminal regime and the Israeli army. And they do not want anybody to remember anything about the military operation that was carried out by the Islamic resistance movement on October 7th. The entire Israeli army is hiding behind the faces of civilians. They made that military operation sound like as it was targeting Israeli civilians, while in fact it was targeting every single military base that is responsible for the merciless blockade that was carried out in Gaza. So like what do? They increase the death toll among civilians. They create some kind of a shock. They prevent people from seeing the failure of the largest like army that the largest and most developed like army we have in the Middle East, which was destroyed within 3 hours in the 7th of October. So they do not care how many Palestinian civilians they are going to murder. They just want to create a kind of a shock to prevent people from remembering the military operation that was carried out back on the 7th of October. And actually, right now, that military operation is like buried under the rubble of the homes they are bombing out in Gaza. And they've created like a situation where they are showing us how you can commit genocide in 2023. Also, like the subjects of Israeli genocide are not like free people. The subject of Israeli genocide are being subject to Israeli criminal behavior for the past 75 years. It's just like another genocidal event that is added to our calendar, and this is another thing that we'll be witnessing and will be traumatized by for the next, like, I don't know what, for the rest of our lives, I guess.
Absolutely. Baha, certain people or certain media are referring to what's happening to the Palestinian people as a genocide. Other people are suggesting that it's ethnic cleansing. Does it matter what they label it as? And what is the difference between the two? Does it matter?
Okay,
Because
dear.
scores and scores and scores of people are being killed ruthlessly, not killed, murdered blatantly and ruthlessly as the Western world looks on. And I think Biden and the US are going to have to answer for this, maybe not immediately, but history is going to hold them responsible. All that needs to happen to stop this madness is for Biden to call off murderous Netanyahu and his Israeli government to stop the killing, to stop the genocide.
Okay, dear. History, if things remain the same, history will look at the current criminals in the same way. History looked at a genocidal criminal called Ariel Sharon who died peacefully in his bed. Yes, it took him 8 years to die, but he died peacefully in his bed. The same way it treated Tony Blair, the same way it treated George Bush. The blood of the brown and black man is worthless. This is what those like savages and criminals are doing. Now, we started with genocide, ethnic cleansing, and so on. There are only three crimes against humanity that the entire world agrees on. One is the crime of forced population transfer, which is the crime of ethnic cleansing. It's carried out by the State of Israel as we speak and have been carried out by the State of Israel for the entire time the State of Israel have existed. Like they have always committed the crime of forced population transfer. The second thing is genocide. Yes, Israelis murder Palestinians for being Palestinians. And in a sense, that is the root for any kind of crime of genocide. Let's remember that the Serb nationalists were accused of committing genocide in Srebrenica and Bosnia after murdering 8,300 people and uncovering like few mass graves. The State of Israel have been busy murdering more than 11,000 of us for being us, for 11,000 Palestinians for being Palestinians. Like, it's very simple to know this. Like Zionist propaganda or Israeli propaganda or even Western American media, like they know and report on the issue as if it's like Palestinian civilians who are being murdered in Gaza or just they died, you know. But the entire thing is like it is a genocide. And the third crime against humanity is the crime of apartheid. So the State of Israel actually commits the only three crimes that the entire world agrees on, which are the crime of forced population transfer, the crime of genocide, and the crime of apartheid. They commit those three crimes day in, day out as we speak. So why do they do this? The State of Israel is emboldened by like white governments and Western governments, and they know that whatever they do, they will go unpunished. It's not that those criminals will be brought to the International Court of Justice. It's like they know that they can do whatever they want and get away with it.